Hello, this is LWilliams from California Continental University. I'm making my presentation on my MRP for the video game industry. Start with the agenda today. First, we're going to start with the overview of the problem, followed up by the market research techniques and existing data sources. We will then discuss the sample strategy and size of this project, as well as the primary data collection analysis. We'll then talk about the estimated timeline and cost. And we'll make a conclusion about ethical and further considerations, which also are takeaways. Overview of the problem here. See, the video game industry is originally started very small. It was kind of thought of a niche market back in the Pong days. However, as the decades roll over, it became a lot more popular. Movie influences presentation were introduced during the PS2 era, where the graphics were strong enough so they can actually do more movie-like quality. Then the Wii and mobile phones expanded the industry, so not just people within a certain age group was doing it, but people young and also the older people began to take gaming more seriously. Former child gamers are still actively playing, even as of now. Now, games like Fortnite is still extremely popular among a variety of different age groups and ethnicity. And even over 10 years ago, the video game industry overtook the movie industry box office receipts like in 2007. So yeah, video game industry is a really big deal. And if you want to get into that field, we really have to consider like all the diversity that's going on with the marketing. We're going to talk about the stakeholders of the video game industry. In addition to CPU and GPU chipset makers like was IBM, but now there's also NVIDIA and all like the memory cards companies, as well as different uh, work groups. Oh, shit, let me start this again. As well as different manufacturing companies that works with the video game industry to make consoles and make cartridges and the CDs and DVDs and other material that's needed to make the machine works. There's also the game designers and developers that has massively changed throughout the last couple of decades. Now, before, only two people maybe needed to make a video game. But now for these new AAA video games, we're talking about things up to 800 different people working on them. Marketers is, of course, a big deal with the stakeholders. Parents has been part of the video game industry for a long time, specifically when it comes to sex and violence. Uh, and then the government itself, due to the same thing as parents. So, yes, the video game industry cannot be understated about how big it is. Let's talk about market research techniques. The traditional method of especially video games was television and magazines. But these days, the internet industry has blew up quite a bit. So there's also streaming presentations. An example of this is Nintendo's Direct that they've been doing this since Iwata, who was the president of Nintendo, beginning to do it back in 2012. And it expanded to the point where they actually did their electronic expo presentation on a stream presentation style. And one thing to consider that was ridiculously less expensive than it was with doing a live presentation, and they was able to do things without worry about um, errors and stuff during the presentation during a live feed. There's also things like YouTube, blogs, and other user-generated material. Um, there's been a lot of Let's Plays of different video games. And for some of the young audience, this is how they get to know some of the older games by seeing other people play them online and make vlogs of them. So yeah, there's a lot of different techniques to look at in terms of market research for the video game industry. All right, so let's look at existing data sources that we can use to examine the status of the industry. There's NPD, which is basically they hold a lot of Americans' data for accessories, consoles, peripherals, uh, and they've been doing this for decades. So they have tons of data. They recently changed their status with the way they give out that information. So you have to pay money to get it, and they actually double down on that and ensure that less people are able to leak that information online. But in either case, NPD does give us a lot of data monthly, and it's enough to tell us what's going on in the industry in America. There's also Media Create in Japan, which is considered to be one of the most accurate uh, places to actually keep tabs data of different consoles, peripherals, and everything like that in Japan. They recently changed their stats, so you have to pay to really get that information. But in terms of secondary existing data sources, that's probably one of the best places to check out. So if a company really want to know what's going on there, you may consider getting a subscription for me to create. Now, one thing to consider is that even though Japan is relatively small compared to the rest of the world, you have to consider that a lot of video game companies such as Sony and Nintendo originally came from there. So in terms of original source material, that's something to look out for. In terms of Europe and other countries like that, there's also the ISFE's new sales data. It's still relatively new, and it doesn't cover every single territory in Europe, but that should be coming up as being one of the best places to check out in terms of different data information for that game industry. And now, in terms of other sources, there's still a lot of internet sources for things like video games, such as IGN, GameSpot, and so. But IGN is probably the biggest one because it's been there for a long time and it seems to cover more than just video games. So that's another place that you may want to check out if you want to get more existing data information. They also provide you links to different places to give you more information. Okay, sampling data, strategies, and size. Um, Wanted to look here is that the potential of the total population of the video game industry exceeds 2 billion right now. And it's probably going to go up, especially since the population keeps going up. The population is too big to utilize the finite population correction error factor, which is FPC. So instead, what they look at is that we want something with like 5% margin of error and then 5% confidence level. The one by the data I got from Sample Size Calculator that's part of the SurveyMonkey's website, they told me that with this size we're looking at here, we need about 400 people as a minimum for the sample size. So even though this is a very big population, 400 or so should be enough to give us a kind of close range of what to expect for the whole population. In terms of primary data analysis, we're going to be taking advantage of the social media sites such as Facebook, Snapchat, and so, and use online surveys and use social media to kind of cover that. We're going to use ordinal and nominal data values to look through in terms of making these type of surveys. And one cool thing about that is that it can reduce cost potential, and we can do some personalization for it, and it has fast response times. In terms of other type of data, like qualitative data, we have consider that focus group is probably one of the best things to do with this because that way we can actually look at uh, different groups of the population in terms of their relationship with video games. So in terms of having a deeper focus, I would recommend a focus group. And this is a common practice to combine quantitative and quantitative data into a single study. It reduces cause presentation and fast response time, but also we get that deeper information during focus group. Okay, the estimated timeline cost here. So if we do 4 focus groups, it'll be going by the information I got from how much does market research cost. It says between $4,000 and $6,000 for each focus group. For the sake of making sure we're not under budget, we're proposing the highest number within that particular range, which is 6,000. The total cost would potentially be up to 24,000, but that doesn't include incentives and traveling. If you add that together, we're going to look at about maybe about 5,000 or so in terms of potential. Online service collection, going by the same source from before, it says it would be $30,000. Up to $30,000 for the customer research. So with that said, if we end up tally up all together, that'd be 59,000 that we may be looking at. In terms of the timeline, if we're talking about a week of prep time, 4 weeks, and we're for one focus group each, then another week afterwards to collect and gather all the data up. And the fact that survey is online, it's useful to get this all done within a 6-week time period. Now let's look at the ethical and further considerations here. Alright, so the code market research standards is designed to promote ethical culture and market research profession within honesty, professionalism, fairness, and confidence combined to support the profession's success. So that's the standard procedure there. So one thing we need to look at is that we have to be very careful with respondents' data, but to make sure it doesn't fall into third parties' hands without that person's consent. So as a researcher, we have to be very careful with the way we protect people's data. Also, since we're talking about a wide range of people for the video game industry, we have to be considerate about the vulnerable populations, including children and older people. So that's a important factor there. Um, well, priors for the considerations here, we have to be considered that the expansive awareness of the ethnicity of the world has been going on in the video game industry. There's been a lot of reports saying how female gamers, for example, have been harassed or not treated fairly compared to their male counterparts. There's also issue with race, ethnicity within games themselves. So that's something we really look at when we look into different marketing and see how to approach things in a different way. Also, as in 2019, the new generation of consoles will be coming, and that may change things a lot. As of now, the latest video game system that came out will be Nintendo Switch, which actually did change quite a bit using the methodology between their hardware, their consoles, and their portable systems. It kind of merged them into one ecosystem. And that kind of made them a lot stronger in terms of gaining recognitions and kind of looking complementary to Sony and Microsoft systems. So it's very interesting to see what Microsoft and Sony will do within the next generation, which will be coming up very soon. All right. Thank you for watching this. As you can see, there's still a lot of stuff to look out for here. Um, I hope you enjoyed this presentation and have a wonderful day.